The cabin lights were dim, the low hum of the plane filling the quiet air as passengers settled into their seats for the long flight ahead. It was one of those late-evening flights where most people just wanted peace, a quiet journey through the clouds before returning home. But peace has a way of being disturbed when prejudice sits too close. Marcus Hall had taken his seat by the window in row 14. A tall, composed black man in his mid-40s, Marcus carried himself with quiet confidence. His posture was straight, his expression calm. He was dressed neatly in a navy blue suit, the kind that spoke of discipline and purpose. On the surface, he was just another passenger, but behind those steady eyes rested a man who had seen too much, an agent who had spent years serving his country, protecting its people, even when some refused to see him as one of their own. A few minutes later, a woman approached. Blonde hair tied neatly, pearl earrings catching the cabin light. The kind of person who believed the world always bent to her comfort. She stopped in front of Marcus's row, her expression tightening as she realized her assigned seat was next to him. A flicker of discomfort crossed her face, one Marcus had seen many times before. It was subtle, but it was there. The tightening of the jaw, the dart of the eyes, the hesitation before sitting down. "Excuse me," she said to the flight attendant, her tone polite but dripping with a certain entitlement. "I think there's been a mistake. My seat is supposed to be next to someone else." The attendant checked her tablet. "Ma'am, this is your seat. 14B. The woman hesitated, glancing at Marcus, who remained silent. He gave her a courteous nod as if to say it was fine. She didn't owe him comfort. But her discomfort grew. "Is there no other seat available?" she asked, lowering her voice but not her disdain. "I'd rather not sit here." The attendant, trying to remain professional, shook her head. "The flight's full, ma'am. Everyone needs to take their assigned seat." Marcus didn't look up. He had learned long ago that dignity didn't always need defense. But the woman wasn't done. "This is ridiculous," she muttered under her breath as she sat down, pulling her handbag close and pressing herself toward the aisle. "I don't feel safe." Those words, "I don't feel safe," landed like a quiet insult. Marcus felt the weight of them, though he didn't move. She didn't know him. She didn't know the countless hours he had spent safeguarding strangers. She didn't know that he had risked his life undercover, his badge heavy against his chest, his service sworn to protect even those who saw him as a threat. The engines roared to life, but tension filled the row like static. The woman shifted, uncomfortably every few minutes, sighing loudly, muttering under her breath. Then, as the plane began to taxi, she pressed the call button again. The attendant returned, smiling politely but weary. "Ma'am?" "I'm sorry, but I can't sit here," the woman said. Her voice trembled just enough to draw attention from nearby passengers. "This man's making me very uncomfortable." Marcus turned his head slightly, his calm gaze meeting hers for the first time. His voice, when he finally spoke, was even and measured. "I've said nothing to you, ma'am." She stiffened. "It's not about what you said, it's the way you're sitting there. I just have a bad feeling." A murmur began spreading through the rows. Passengers looked up from their phones and magazines. Some rolled their eyes. Others watched, with the kind of detached curiosity people have when prejudice unfolds in public. They see it, but few intervene. "Ma'am," the flight attendant said carefully, "I assure you, there's no reason to feel unsafe. If there's a problem, we can handle it after takeoff." The woman's voice rose slightly. "No, I don't want to take off sitting next to him. I want him moved." Marcus's jaw tightened. It wasn't anger, just the slow burn of exhaustion. The same old script, different stage. A second attendant came over, then the purser. The captain was notified. The flight paused on the runway. Whispers rippled through the cabin. The woman crossed her arms, convinced she was doing the right thing. To her, she was protecting herself. To Marcus, she was stripping away his humanity. One of the attendants turned to Marcus, apologetic. "Sir, could I please ask you to step into the aisle for a moment while we sort this out?" Marcus looked at her, a young woman, clearly caught between policy and morality. He nodded, unclipped his seatbelt, and stood. The entire section went quiet. The woman avoided his eyes, staring out the window as if she had won some unspoken battle. He stood there in the narrow aisle, calm but heavy with the weight of history repeating itself. He thought of his father, a veteran who had been refused service in uniform. He thought of his mother, who taught him to stay composed no matter how loud the insult. And he thought of every young black man watching moments like this, learning, consciously or not, that sometimes dignity must be carried in silence. "Sir," the purser began gently, "I'm very sorry for the inconvenience, but we just need to clarify." Marcus raised a hand slightly. His voice was low but firm. "No need to apologize. I understand." He reached into his inside jacket pocket. A murmur rippled through the cabin again. Not of fear, but curiosity. The woman stiffened, her eyes wide, her breath quickening as he pulled out a small leather wallet. Slowly, deliberately, Marcus flipped it open. The golden badge inside caught the dim cabin light. 3 letters that silenced every whisper in the room. FBI. The attendants froze. The woman blinked rapidly, confusion flooding her face. Marcus's tone didn't change. "I was heading home after a federal assignment," he said calmly. "But it seems I've been profiled instead." The silence that followed was deafening. He looked directly at the woman, not with anger, but with something far deeper. Quiet disappointment. "You said you didn't feel safe. I wonder why." The woman's lips parted, but no words came. Her confidence cracked. Around her, passengers stared, some ashamed for having watched silently. Marcus closed his badge case and slid it back into his jacket. "I serve this country, ma'am. Even people who fear me before they know my name." The captain's voice came over the intercom, tension clear even through the static. "Cabin crew, please resume takeoff procedures." The attendants exchanged quick glances. The woman sat rigid, face flushed. Marcus returned to his seat, calm as ever. The plane began to move again, engines rumbling, but the cabin remained hushed, every soul aware they had just witnessed something that went beyond a misunderstanding. Marcus leaned back, looking out the window as the plane lifted off into the night sky. The city lights fell away beneath them, small and distant. Beside him, the woman stayed silent, hands clasped tightly together. And though no apology came, the silence between them spoke volumes of guilt, of shame, and of the uncomfortable truth that prejudice rarely hides for long. He wasn't looking for validation. He wasn't looking for pity. He was simply a man who wanted peace and respect at 30,000 feet. But as the plane climbed higher, one thing became clear. Ignorance might still travel freely, but dignity, when revealed, flies higher. The cabin lights dimmed again after takeoff, but the energy had changed. The same people who once pretended not to notice were now glancing at Marcus with a mix of respect and unease. Some wanted to say something, an apology, perhaps, but words once withheld rarely find courage later. The woman beside him stared straight ahead, her face pale against the glow of the reading light. Marcus could feel the tension, but he wasn't angry. Not anymore. Years in the Bureau had taught him patience, that justice, true justice, wasn't just about laws or arrests. It was about truth, and sometimes the truth needed silence to echo. A flight attendant came by quietly with a cup of water. "Sir," she whispered, "on behalf of the crew, I want to say we're sorry for how that happened." Marcus gave her a kind smile. "You don't need to apologize for her actions, just learn from it." She nodded, her eyes soft with understanding, and moved on. Minutes turned into hours. Somewhere over the clouds, Marcus felt the woman stir beside him. She took a breath, then spoke softly, her voice almost trembling. "I didn't mean to offend you." He turned slightly, his tone measured. "You didn't offend me, ma'am. You revealed something, maybe not to me, but to yourself." She hesitated, searching for the right words. I've had bad experiences. You thought you could see danger by skin color," Marcus interrupted gently. "That's the problem. We're trained to see threats. You're taught to imagine them." She swallowed hard, shame washing over her expression. "You're right." He studied her for a moment, then looked back toward the window. "I didn't show you that badge to prove my worth. I showed it so you'd remember this moment the next time you judge someone too quickly. You can't serve justice if you only believe it belongs to people who look like you." The woman nodded slowly, her eyes glassy. For a long moment, neither spoke. The steady hum of the engines filled the space between them, the quiet rhythm of reflection. As the flight neared its destination, Marcus's phone buzzed softly. A message from his daughter popped up on the screen. "Daddy, when do you land?" "Can't wait to see you." A smile broke through the tension, small but real. His daughter, 10 years old, bright, curious, and unaware of the world's cruelty, was the reason he still believed in change. He thought about what he'd tell her one day. Not about the insult, not about the woman, but about the lesson, that strength isn't loud and dignity doesn't need applause. It just needs to stand firm when others waver. When the wheels finally touched down, the passengers began gathering their belongings. The woman sat still, clearly replaying everything in her mind. Marcus waited patiently as the aisles filled. Then, quietly, she turned to him. "Thank you," she whispered, "for not embarrassing me, even when I deserved it." He looked at her, his voice steady. "Embarrassment isn't what changes people. Reflection does." As he rose to leave, a few passengers nodded at him, subtle gestures of respect. One man even murmured, "Thank you for your service." Marcus gave a polite nod and stepped into the aisle. His presence calm but commanding. At the gate, as passengers dispersed into the terminal, Marcus paused for a moment, looking out at the crowds moving in every direction. Each person a story, each face a judgment waiting or withheld. He adjusted his tie, took a deep breath, and walked forward. Another day, another silent fight, won with restraint instead of rage. For Marcus, it wasn't about proving himself. It never was. It was about reclaiming the narrative, that black dignity isn't fragile, that black professionalism isn't rare, and that every quiet act of composure in the face of prejudice is a victory in itself. And somewhere, on another flight or in another room, perhaps that same woman would remember him, the man she tried to remove, the man who stayed calm, the man who carried a badge not as a symbol of power, but as a promise that no matter how heavy the prejudice, justice would always have a face like his, because true strength doesn't shout, it simply stands. And that night, in a sky filled with clouds and silence, Marcus Hall stood taller than anyone at 30,000 feet.